There are many beautiful Jumeaus, Bébé Jumeaus in the auction, and I wanted to show you just a kind of a cross-sampling of some wonderful examples. We have over here in the far right, standing in her naked glory, because I wanted you to see how fabulous that body was. She does come with undergarments and in her antique chemise, original, is this very, very beautiful early period Jumeau with the 8-ball jointed body, straight wrist, wonderful antique wig, signed on the back, of course, Jumeau Médaille d'Or signature. I know any of you who are collectors already know this, but the Jumeau Médaille d'Or first appeared on the dolls when Jumeau won his award at the 1878 Paris International Exposition. And so many people think that this would date a doll to 1878. What it really does is date the doll 1878 and after, until about 1890. Made sometime during that time period. He continued to put that stamp on the doll, and then after added several other variations of it. Very similar to example, sometimes I'll get a letter from people who have a Barbie to sell, and they say, well, it has this early stamp on the body or something, so I guess that's the early first Barbie. I said, no, it was a mark that was put on there at that time and then continued to be used. So things never change. Everything evolves, and people use the same techniques. He won this award, and he was going to make sure his dolls showed it. But this is a very wonderful early example. Another very beautiful early example, we have a brown-eyed and a blue-eyed, is this little girl in the gold silk dress, or bronze silk dress, I guess you would call it, bronze-colored silk dress with a velvet trim and her wonderful antique bonnet. I love this dress because it really enhances her eyes. It just brings out the very beautiful color of her eyes. It's perfect for her. Again, has the early 8-ball jointed straight wrist body. And then another of the early Jumeaus, and this one again, and look at all of them, how very beautiful their eyes are. And having the beautiful eyes is a very, very big part of the beauty of Jumeau's. I mean, originally he was dependent upon other suppliers, but so significant did Émile Jumeau feel that the eyes were to his dolls that eventually commissioned a particular eye maker, a glass eye maker, to come and work for him. And the glass eyes were actually made in his factory, and that's why they are so absolutely spectacular most of the time. Now, Jumeau was so popular, and he did have a stamp on the body of the doll, but sometime about 1882, 1883, he began to realize, gee, people are copying my doll, and I'm going to show you some great pretenders later on. And so he said, maybe I better start marking my doll. Originally, he had made, you can see it back behind me now, this is one of the largest size of what is commonly known as the Bébé Triste. And it was his beautiful portrait model that was sculpted by the Parisian sculptor Carrier-Belleuse under commission to Jumeau. And a very distinctive face. Collectors used to call it the long face Jumeau, and that was kind of a nod to the very physical length of the face, but very, very sweet. This one has an outstanding waist-length wig, antique mohair wig, rose silk dress, and a very, very superb decoration of the bisque with the rose blushing on the eyelids. Well, then he decided, well, all right, maybe I better actually put my signature on a doll, because those dolls were just marked with size numbers. He said, well, maybe I should put a signature. So he came out with his models that were known as the EJ, because they would have EJ stamped on the back of the heads. And the EJ mark evolved very, very quickly. But the first of them is marked appropriately EJA, the first of the EJ series. A very, very distinctive face on this doll, very plump, full cheeks, very plump face, very full cheeks, but a wonderful, wonderful expression. And we have in the auction this beautiful example in her antique mariner costume. Very, very lovely. And this from the Rose Rogan collection in Doylestown. Very lovely doll. And after that, he went on, of course, to have all of his periods of EJ, and then eventually not eventually, but a few years thereafter, about 1884, 1885, introduced a doll with a red stamp, Tête Jumeau, signifying, this is my doll, don't copy her. And was involved in many, many litigation suits with people who tried to. One of the litigation suits he won the rights to make this doll, which is stamped BF, and that's the Bébé Français, a very distinctive and different looking face with a character kind of expression on him, and a very, very, very different and very hard to find, particularly in this petite size, wearing his antique mariner costume. Jumeau made dolls in all sizes. I showed you the big Jumeau Triste a minute ago, and now I'm showing you this wonderful, wonderful little all original. This is an open mouth Jumeau made toward the end of the century, wearing the factory original chemise, and check them out. These are the original Jumeau socks, by the way. They're a very, very distinctive style that he had made in his own factory for Jumeau's, and the leather shoes with his marking on them. Wonderful. I'll turn her around so you can see her from the back too. She's a great little size 1. What captured everyone then and now, in 1905, the Bleuette was presented. The world of Bleuette began. And we have in the auction one of the first period Bleuettes with the original body and with an original, although from a later period, Bleuette costume. Very, very beautiful. And the first Bleuette was the only one that appeared with what might be called a classic Jumeau face. And so collectors love it simply because it looks like Jumeau, but also because it's a very rare first period of the Bleuette. And these are some of the wonderful Jumeaus we have to offer in this auction, along with other beautiful dolls by Gaultier, by Steiner, and other French makers. A few minutes ago, I was talking to you about Émile Jumeau and how he became concerned that many of his dolls were being copied and presented by other doll makers. Chief among these doll makers were those doll makers from Sonnenberg in Germany. And many of them actually had offices in Paris, and they were right on the lookout for any new additions or new models that were coming out from the French doll makers. And then if they felt there was a good market for them, they would buy one of the dolls, get them back to Sonnenberg, make a copy, and they would present their version of it. Because the way items were produced in Germany, they could do it at a lower cost, and ended up becoming a very, very competitive market for the dolls. There was a wonderful collector in Buffalo area years ago who wrote a great article on them and called these dolls the Great Pretenders. And I always think this sums them up perfectly. And I have 3 examples to show you of lookalikes or pretenders. The first would be, if you noticed a minute ago, we were showing you the circle dot model of Brou. And I have here 4 examples by Sonnenberg makers, starting with a little tiny girl in pink down at the bottom, tiniest size, absolutely wonderful doll. And then 3 other examples of dolls with variations of painting of complexion or painting of drama in the face, some of them being much more highly dramatic in their painting, like the tall girl in the back. But all of them basically, that model was a copy of the Circle Dot Brou by Leon Casimir Brou. And that's what they are known as, the Sonnenberg lookalike Brou. If we come into the middle, I think this is interesting because we have the dolls that Émile Jumeau was concerned about. And we have here on my left-hand side, we have the early premier or portrait Jumeau. And next to it, we have a very beautiful doll coming out of Sonnenberg with a swivel neck on a kid body, actually more copying the style of the Brou bébé, but still having the face of this early period Jumeau. And then next to her, this wonderful doll that I particularly wanted to show you, because not only would the German doll makers copy the face, they also wanted to copy the costumes. And their costumes are extraordinary. Whenever you can find one that is all original like this one, they're absolutely extraordinary. However, I will tell you, having handled them, in the construction of them, in the making of them, they don't have that final degree of luxe quality of construction that the French dolls have. But this one, imagine finding this doll, all original in this costume. Imagine finding it as a child in 1880. Imagine finding it as a collector today if you found this doll in your collection. Absolutely extraordinary. Wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to show you the bonnet one more time. I think it's so great. Look, the white piqué bonnet, perfectly designed to be fitted to the head with little attached bows, and it has a little braiding around the bottom. It has the rickrack trim, handmade rickrack. Absolutely stunning. So here was an opportunity for someone who could not afford to have who could not afford to have a French doll. They could buy for their child the Sonnenberg doll that looked like it. And I might add that tradition has carried on, because if you cannot afford to own a beautiful Jumeau, early period Jumeau, perhaps you could afford to buy a Sonnenberg doll that looks like it and get on your path toward building an extraordinary collection. Now, there is a doll that collectors have called, euphemistically, the A.T. Kestner, because it is an exact copy of a beautiful little French bébé made by André Toulier about 1882, 1884, and marked on the back of the head, A.T. Kestner went with it. They saw that head, they said, that's a beautiful doll, and they made their model, which looks almost exactly like the A.T. Bébé by André Toulier. This little girl, I didn't show her in the French collection, by the way, and I want to show her to you now. This little girl is pretty extraordinary, and I want to talk to you a little more about opportunity, because collectors always say, I can never afford one of those really beautiful dolls, and she is so rare. She is as beautiful as she is rare. She has a minor flaw at the back of her head, and I'm going to hold it up here, and I'm kind of willing to bet that the camera might not even be able to pick it up. We could only ever find it with a light inside her head. A tiny little 1/2 inch hairline at the crown rim at the back of the head. Now, how will that impact its value? In my opinion, it really shouldn't impact at all. Oh, perhaps just a little bit, perhaps 10%, but it should not impact you're wanting to own this doll. That hairline has probably been there since time it was made. And there's no question of the structural integrity of the doll. It's going to last forever, and her beauty is incredible. I say this is not damage, this is opportunity. And I hope collectors will start to see things more and more that way. Wonderful little sailor costume too, by the way. So there's my little story about the Great Pretenders, which I love, and hopefully, and actually I see this happening more and more. Many collectors are starting to buy these dolls and really cherish them. We'll see some others in just a moment. Perhaps nothing in Madame Bossard's collection well, except for her miniature rooms and all of her accessories and other things. Never mind, forget I said that. You can put it in the video, but everything about her collection is so full of wonderful just little treasures, just little trinkets. And I'm showing here some of the wonderful little unusual all bisque or miniature dolls that we have in the collection. Starting over here on my right-hand side is a wonderful wedding party with Simon and Halbig Little Women dolls, all in their very, very beautiful antique matching costumes. Undoubtedly, this was presented originally for someone's shower or at a centerpiece at their wedding. And they're very, very beautiful and perfectly preserved. Wonderful little detail of the wigs with the hair ornaments in it. I'm just going to turn this one around so you can see the back of her hair, how wonderfully detailed that is. And as I'm looking at the back of them now, there are one more has the same style as her, and then 3 of the ladies have a wonderful little top knot at the back of their head, but all matching costumes. Absolutely wonderful. Little novelty dolls that are very, very rare to find. They show up so seldom. And watch, these are French dolls. She has a mask on her face. You press down on her shoulders. She moves her arm and the mask removes to show her face. And her little partner, I don't know if you can see it clearly, but he's holding a little toy Polichinelle. And he lifts his arm up and down and waves the Polichinelle or Party Marat, whatever you would have it. Original costumes. Costumes are a bit frail, but what treasures to ever find these. They're absolutely wonderful. Behind them are hiding a pair of wonderful little German all-bisque googlies in their original Cossack costumes. I don't know if anyone has ever found the background of these. I would love to know, because they're rare, but they're not like, I've never seen them before. When they come in, I say, oh, there's a pair of the Cossacks. And they were in these, so they were obviously made for some kind of an exhibition or some special event. And they're wonderful to find because the costumes are so unbelievably detailed, with the little beads and the pearls and the wonderful coiffures, the headpieces. They're just absolutely stunning. Now, lying back here, lying down, is when you say all bisque miniatures, you don't always say little, because sometimes they're grand. And I just wanted you to see her standing next to this little girl in the brown dress, I think is 6 inches, and she would be considered large. This girl is grand, all bisque. Do you realize what a cherished life she's had to lead in order to make it to this point in her life, and she's still here in perfect, extant condition, a wonderful little all-bisque doll with her painted shoes and socks. Standing at the front of the room are 3 little all-bisque black complexion dolls, obviously sold as a trio years ago. Each is slightly different in their original exotic costume, and again, extremely rare to find. I will turn them all to the back so you can see the back of their costumes. And they are definitely out for a parade. They're like little helmets they have on their heads. They're absolutely wonderful. Again, probably made for an exhibition. We'll move those over to the side. Simon and Halbig was one of the big makers of all bisque dolls, and the dolls that are known as the black stocking dolls are some of the most sought after by that firm. They have black stockings, a very typical fashion, not even a fashion, just a utilitarian clothing item for little girls around 1890 period. Black stockings that would go to above the knees and obviously keep you from showing dirt on your white socks, because it was muddy streets at that time. This is a wonderful little girl that is all original, little Simon and Halbig black stocking girl. Another little Simon and Halbig, and this one is actually paper mache. It's the same head, the 886 model, but he has his original paper mache body, and he's wearing his original costume from Brittany in France. Simon and Halbig seems to have made many, many heads for French dolls, as well as their own German production, and undoubtedly this was a special commission to be sold in Brittany gift shops. Now, while we're staying with Simon and Halbig, I did want to show you one other thing. Again, this is not a miniature, not an all bisque miniature, not a little mignonette. But I wanted to show you, because when you're looking at dolls and you're considering a rarity of a model, always consider, well, is there anything about that model that makes that particular doll rare? And this is a very good example. And the reason I put it in this group is, I will tell you, it is its size. You simply don't find the 1329 model in this size. They're always usually about this size, and once in a rare while you'll find a grand size one. But to have one as petite as this is a very, very grand treasure in her original kimono. I told you that many of the dolls from Madame Bossard's collection were selling with their accessories or their furniture or their little novelty things that go with them. And this is one of the many beautiful little all bisque dolls from her collection with this wonderful German hand-painted miniature furniture. So you can see she displays with it beautifully. I showed you the Simon and Halbig dolls before from the wedding party, but here is a lovely pair of dollhouse dolls. The gentleman with his sculpted mustache, and the lady, I'm going to turn her to the side. I want you to see her sunbonnet from the side. And then the back of her costume. So they are costumed in like the 1830 period, and they are very, very socially prominent couple about town, and beautifully presented and preserved. In the front, we have a set of 5 little all bisque miniatures, each wearing identical costumes, little sailor-type costumes of blue flannel, little boys and girls both with mohair wigs, and they are wonderful little dolls. We have a lot of this type of thing in the collection. And then over to their side are a trio of, I think I want to move them because I think maybe you can't see the trio too well. We have a trio of 3 dolls from Jeannie Orsini. Jeannie Orsini was one of the American artists of the 1920 period, and many of her designs, not many, but some of her designs are actually registered by the U.S. Patent Office. You can find the registration there. And she designed these very impish character faces, and her dolls are usually notable because they will have the pointy finger, which these do. And the 3 of these are wearing matching, each slightly different, but definitely they were sold as a trio of wonderful little factory original winter wear costumes in white flannel. A grand, wonderful pair to find. So rare. Rare to find even as a single doll, but to find a trio, almost incalculable.